They assume what is true would be what would be most ethical if it were true.
Wow. I feel like Malcolm Collins absolutely nails it in this. I've never heard this theory before. It completely starts to make sense of all of the ways that I've seen progressive ideology evolve, all the confusion I've had about it. So this single kind of concept, this theory that he's about to unpack, I think this is the key. This is the Rosetta Stone for understanding how progressives think. So let's take a listen.
But I think a lot of this is downstream of a centralizing part of progressive ideology that I hadn't given enough credit to before, which is they assume what is true would be what would be most ethical if it were true.
Ah, right. So, okay, if we were to build like a catechism of the urban monoculture, a core proponent of it would be, all right, well, first, throw out reality. We're going to make the most charitable interpretation of everything and then just model the world based on that. Like, this person's homeless, not because maybe they're like mentally ill and or dangerous or addicted to drugs, but because they just haven't been given very good opportunities. And therefore, if we just support them for a while, they'll get back on their feet.
That's a great example, actually, where you've taken the core concept and then you've particularized it to what do you assume about any individual homeless person?
Right.
On broader things, like the idea that there is, like the first one I said, that people aren't born with different degrees of talent, right? If it was true that we were all genetically identical, if it was true that there were not differences in proficiencies, that would be a more fair world. Right.
Right. Yeah. So we have to assume that.
So we have to
in this religious framework.
In this religious framework, if it was true that like there was no such thing as objective beauty, right? And beauty was only subjective and it was completely cultural, you could say, well, nobody's really ugly, right? Like nobody's born unattractive. This woman isn't unattractive, right? Just that you have or with fat people. Well, fat people aren't unattractive, right?
You've just been brainwashed by capitalism to have a patriarchal and misogynistic view of beauty focused on what makes the most money, something, right?
Yeah, well, they would say, well, it might be that, you were brainwashed because of all the ads you saw growing up and everything like this. And this is why they started doing all those campaigns with ugly women ads. And let me tell you what, guys, still not into ugly chicks.
So the truth is whatever I think would be true if we were all being maximally ethical. Now this, I think the foundation of this has got to be the belief that all reality is a social construct. So if I capitulate to an idea of reality that I think is unethical, then just by agreeing that that is true and that exists, I am somehow denying one of the core facets of what I believe, and that is that, no, this is all socially constructed. Gender is socially constructed. I think the best example of this is got to be trans women in women's sports, right? So what you have in these situations is a denial of biology, and no matter how much data, no matter what is discovered at the sort of basic reality truth level, it always gets overcome by this commitment to only believe that something is true if it fits my ethical framing for the world. What ought to be true is what's true, because if I agree somehow that there are base realities that we have to contend with, then now I've got a whole nother data set that's going to infect my ethics, and I have to consider reality when studying ethics. This must be an amazing thing to be able to just imagine what the perfect ethical world would be, and then to believe that I have to manifest that world perfectly by not agreeing with any facts that somehow get in the way of that ideology. Because if I agree with those facts, then they're going to infect and bring this sort of corrupting influence into the ideology. So I think anytime now I approach really trying to understand progressive ideology, I'm going to constantly start by, what do they think should be true if their ethics were all that manifested itself in reality? And then I'm going to be able to predict often what they're going to say is true or what reality actually is, believing that since all of this is a social construct anyway, we can actually impact reality simply by changing our beliefs. What do you guys think? Is that the way that you think the progressives see reality? And is this really the key to kind of unlocking and predicting what actually is behind their ability to make these shifts in ethics all the time? If you guys want to go deeper into something that my daughter Sydney and I discussed on our podcast, here's a clip about how this particular way of understanding explains more the why behind the reason this happened within progressive culture. So take a listen to this this clip on how the Bible can unveil what motivates progressive ideology.